And just so y'all know, Tad wrote this song.
Here from places wide and varied, unified through what we hold dear. Even though we've 1,000 different voices, still we say our choices, we will sing the same song. Cornerstones that hold us all together, covenant to sanctify our lives, and we know that the edges may be treated, our paths a little ragged, still we try.
Thank you so much, Tad and Emily. Really appreciate your music. And I think all of us heard some technical glitches there, so we will clearly be working on those over time. So it's all a part of it. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our second Zoom service of the Boulder Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I'm the Reverend Lydia Ferrante Roseberry, your minister, coming here from BVUUF Studio 1, which was otherwise formerly known as my home office. And I want to thank my husband, Phil, and my daughter, Talia, for being the set design team this week. I'm joined today in service leadership with Jessica Lakeman, our Director of Lifespan Faith Formation, Irene Favor, our Service Associate, Ted Coriath, our Music Director, Emily Jaworski, our soloist, and Deborah Mensch, as you've met, our Tech Usher, or maybe our Tech Concierge, Tad suggested. And all of us are in our own homes today as a way to protect ourselves and to care for each other. So I do hope that all of you also are heeding the public health recommendations to limit contact with anyone outside of your home. I understand that this is the most critical time for us to do this here in Boulder County to manage the spread of the coronavirus. And I've also seen there's people from literally from France and probably other parts of the world joining us. So it is now a worldwide way that we will care for each other. Our lives have changed so rapidly since last week. I've been out of my house once since I returned home from the fellowship last weekend, and that was to gather some of these things from the First United Methodist Church. There's a lot of loss from canceled events and economic uncertainty and real health fears among us. And yet, we have found a way to be together. And in some ways, I feel closer to many people than I ever had before. Now, if I were the queen of words for the day, Or if these unicorn slippers of mine had some real magic in them, I would replace the often used term social distancing with the term physical distancing, because we can still be social, as our gathering today shows us. So I invite you also to imagine changing that narrative and lean into all of the ways that we actually can be social with one another. Please do take a moment now to reflect upon at least one thing that you are grateful for this morning. May that gratitude in your heart spread. And may you see many, many things for which to be grateful today and every other day. Now, today I have two screens set up. One so I can see your tiny faces, and that is going to be over on my right as I share here from BVUUF Studio One. So if you see me turn to my right, it's because I want to see some people once in a while. And also, I will be in the breakout rooms later, and I will stay for virtual coffee hour. So I'm glad I'll be getting some small group time with people. I also want to invite us to find a hand gesture that we can use to show appreciation for each other. So last week I suggested we do this one where you've got a hand on your heart and one towards the screen to feel the connection. You can choose a namaste bow or something like this, but that visual is going to be really important as we continue to gather here together. I invite us to center ourselves with our welcome words. You are all welcome here today. In the beauty of languages and cultures and skin tones and all the shapes and sizes that come together in your uniqueness, you are welcome among us today. In all the ways you express and experience gender, you are welcome here. In the beauty that is who you love and how you love, you are welcome here. Muslim, pagan, humanist, Jew, Unitarian, Universalist, Buddhist, or Christian, with all the traditions that inform your spiritual life, you are welcome here. Whether you come today with laughter in your heart or with tears, whether you come isolated or feeling the connection amongst others, you are welcome here. You are invited to join us with an open mind, a loving heart, and willing hands. We welcome you today. We're very glad everybody was able to join us this morning. I see how many participants, 168 people linked on. So it's just wonderful that we have found this way to be together. I'm going to invite Irene Favor, our service associate, to share a few announcements.
Good morning, afternoon. Although last week was the official end of our pledge drive, we know that these are not ordinary times, and returning your pledge card to the fellowship may not have been on the top of your list. Still, we have received 148 pledges totaling over $400,000. Thank you to those who have made their pledge for the coming year. To the remaining 71 pledge families that we are counting on, we still have $89,000 to raise to reach our pledge goal for 2020-2021. There is a link to the online pledging on the homepage of our website. And if you want further instructions, please contact the office. While our hospitality teams get a break for a while, we now have a new need, tech ushers. If you'd like some training in this important Sunday morning function, please contact Deb Mensch. Finally, Reverend Lydia is holding Zoom office hours every week. You can pop in or out as you wish using the same Zoom link that you used today. Her office hours are posted on the BVUUF calendar. And this week she'll be available Tuesday evening from 7 to 9 p.m. Tuesday evening, and Wednesday morning from 9 till 11 a.m. Thank you. Back to Lydia.
Please join me in saying our chalice lighting words. We light this chalice for the warmth of love, the light of truth, and the energy of action.
All right, we turned down the volume on the microphone a little bit.
And I now invite you to let the third ringing of our bowl draw you deeper into the present moment and the virtual company of this beloved community.
All right, we've adjusted the volume on the microphone. Hopefully this is a little better. Thank you so much, Ted and Emily, way over there. So as staff and lay leaders, we have spent a lot of time this week asking ourselves, what is ours to do in the midst of this worldwide crisis? We've amped up our caring ministries, checking in on one another and going virtual for some of our neighborhood gatherings. We've gone virtual for our programming for children and youth, including adding preschool teacher Miss Ari's morning merriments every Monday through Friday, and bedtime stories every week, evenings starting at 7 p.m. And I'll be doing the Friday evening bedtime stories, so I can't wait to connect with people of all ages during that time. You can find all of these offerings on our BVUUF calendar and in Connections Weekly and on our website. And of course, here we are again, meeting for Sunday services in the most unanticipated of ways. When it comes to these Sunday services, I've been asking myself, what does Unitarian Universalism in particular have to offer us? How is it that anything that we might be doing here together might provide a different lens or a different angle from the variety of sources of information and even spiritual inspiration that you may be gathering? And I remembered a moment as a colleague, it was over a year ago, and I was recounting a particularly difficult period in my life and sharing how I felt truly a web of connection surrounding me during that time. Some of you have heard me talk about that before. And what she said to me was, "Your theology held up." And I've never forgotten that my theology held up in a time that was individually difficult for me. And it was true. My own faith in a seen and unseen web of connection really was there for me when I needed it most. Now, I'm guessing, since most of you didn't spend years studying theology, that even the term theology is probably not something that you throw around in your day-to-day language. But I also guarantee that you do have implicit, if not explicit, theological underpinnings, core values, core beliefs, core ways of understanding the world that you carry with you. The first definition of theology is the study of religious faith, practice, and experience. Faith, practice, and experience. It grounds the big questions of life, those questions of love, of death, of how did we get here, who's in control. And they provide us safe, steady, strong places when we may feel adrift. Within Unitarian Universalism, you may know that we have 7 principles, but they are not necessarily theological statements. They are covenantal. Most of them are about the how of our deepest held faith statements. So as we thought about what's ours to do in these unprecedented times, I suggested that we explore our theological roots. Both Unitarians and Universalists have roots in the biblical traditions of Judaism and Christianity, although most of our congregations don't anchor ourselves there. Still, our ancestors often turned to biblical treasures, interpreting them for their times. One of these was Reverend James Luther Adams. Adams was a 20th century Unitarian Christian, and he was actually one of my heroes when I studied him in seminary. His passion for justice and the power of religious communities very much inspired my own call to ministry. As a Christian Unitarian, he was biblically based and used that sacred text to help deepen our Unitarian faith. I'm going to ask Irene to read one such story that inspired James Luther Adams.
Thank you, Lydia. This is a very well-known story from the Jewish and Christian tradition. It's about an ordinary boy, David, who stepped up against a huge, dangerous foe named Goliath. The version I'm drawing on is from a book by Malcolm Gladwell called David and Goliath, Underdogs, Misfits, and the Art of Battling Giants. Gladwell, in his book, argues that David won the day because he knew his own strengths and he was not afraid to think outside the box, as we say today. The story takes place about 3,000 years ago in Palestine during a war between the Israelites and the Philistines. The 2 armies met in the mountains. They were camped on ridges across from each other on either side of a valley. Neither army dared to attack the other because they would have to go down their hill and then make a suicidal climb up the enemy's ridge on the other side. So they were stuck. Finally, to break the impasse, the Philistines called for a duel. Each side would send their fiercest warrior to fight it out in the valley between the 2 armies. The Philistines sent Goliath. He was a giant, 6'9" at least, wearing a bronze helmet and full body armor. The giant faced the Israelites and he shouted out, "Choose you a man and let him come down to me. If he wins, we shall be slaves to you. But if I win and strike him down, you will be slaves to us." In the Israelite camp, no one moved. Goliath was terrifying. Who could win against such a giant? Finally, David, a shepherd boy, stepped forward and volunteered. The Israelite king objected. "You cannot go against this Philistine. You are just a boy. He is a giant, a man of war." The king tried to convince David to at least wear armor for protection, but David refused because he said it would just slow him down. Instead, he would take his own weapons, his staff and a sling that he used to protect the sheep. Now, the sling is a leather pouch with long strips on either side. You put a stone in the pouch and then you whirl it around and around faster and faster. When you let go of one side, it launches the stone at a terrific speed. The ammunition is only stones, but it can be a deadly weapon in the hands of an expert, and David was an expert. Goliath had protected himself with heavy armor, and he carried a big sword, plus a javelin and a huge spear because he was expecting to do battle with a fierce, seasoned warrior. When he saw a shepherd boy carrying a staff, he was insulted. Goliath yelled, "Am I a dog that you should come to me with sticks?" But David wasn't bothered. He reached down and he picked up 5 smooth stones and put them in his shoulder bag. Then he ran down the hill into the valley carrying his staff and the sling. When he was in range, David put one of his stones into the leather pouch of the sling, and he whirled the sling around his head and fired at the giant's exposed forehead. Goliath fell, stunned. David ran forward, grabbed the giant's sword, and cut off his head. The Philistines saw that their warrior was dead, the biblical account reads, and they fled. Back to Lydia.
James Luther Adams took this image of the 5 smooth stones that David carried to articulate what he called the 5 smooth stones of liberal religion. What we see in this story is that the narrative is changed from the big, mean, dominant culture being the one that rules the day, to the capacity of ordinary people, meek and even small little lowly shepherds of those times, to actually be a part of creating something new. So what Adams did, what Adams wrote, actually doesn't quite roll off the tongue. It's written in this long, lengthy language that I will send out in an email in the service resources. But a few years ago, Front Range ministers, Reverend Nancy Bowen and Reverend Mike Moran, were looking to re-articulate our faith in language that might better serve us. And so they crystallized Adams' words into 5 simple phrases. They called them the 5 jagged rocks. You'll see them here. There is a unity that makes us one. All souls are sacred and worthy. Salvation is in this life. Courageous love transforms the world. And there's a truth continues to be revealed. We decided as we reflected on those that we will use these themes for the next 5 weeks. We'll focus on what we will call these theological rocks, these safe docking points as we navigate the difficult waters ahead. And I hope they provide for you also a theology that holds up in the times we have before us. Generosity is one of the most profound transformational practices, and it's something this congregation has been incredibly powerful at using to transform lives. Each week, we remind ourselves of the abundance of our individual and collective lives by donating 1/2 of our plate to those organizations who bring our values into the world. In this way, we are always also reminding ourselves to look beyond ourselves, knowing that we don't have to do it all. This week, we'll share our plate with Together Colorado, who bring faith communities together to put human dignity on the public agenda. Our congregation has worked with Together Colorado for over a decade. We are changing across public priorities as we make real improvements in the lives of many Coloradans. Working together across coalitions, we have improved access to mental health services across the county. We have improved the lives of many Colorado immigrants. We have increased the minimum wage for Colorado's working class and stopped racist practices amongst police forces and in schools in our area. So I invite you to please text generously while Tad offers us some beautiful music.
And the piece that I'm going to offer today, hopefully you can hear me okay, is a meditation by John Kramer, who is a composer and UU music director working out of Winchester, Massachusetts. This is Meditation in D.
For that beautiful music. I want to thank you all for your generous gifts and the many ways that your generosity is flowing in these days.
And now we sing.
From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live.
So I have a question for all of you. We were talking about how James Luther Adams used the idea of smooth stones, and yet when Reverend Nancy Bowen and Mike Moran got together, they instead decided that what was more appropriate for our current understanding was jagged rocks. So I'm wondering what comes to mind, and you can put it in the chat, what comes to mind when you first hear that phrase, jagged rocks? Rocky Mountains. Shipwrecks, cutting my skin. Challenge, dangerous, sharp and dangerous, ouch. Full of scrapes and cuts. Scary, pain, dangerous. Yes, all of these things, right? Jagged rocks are sharp and difficult, maybe frightening, maybe even painful, which on one hand is certainly true. Our faith is not an easy one. It's often hard and perhaps even painful to truly live our lives in such a way that honors that all souls are sacred and worthy. When laws are unjust and hurt those who we hold dear, to still have faith in the idea that courageous love transforms the world can feel nearly impossible. It's true. It's also true that there is a bravery and a tenacity, a willingness to get back up again and again, which is essential to our ability to hold these jagged rocks at the center of our faith. But there's another thing about jagged rocks. Some of you referred to it. They give us something to hold on to. All those jagged edges which seem so challenging on the surface, when you look deeper, you see that it is the very jaggedness of the rock which creates the nooks and crannies, the crevices and cracks which give us something to hold on to, especially when times are tough. So take a moment, and I'm going to invite you to imagine with me. Imagine that you are floating down a river. It's a long and winding river. In fact, it's so long that it would take your entire lifetime to reach the end. Sometimes the current moves along slowly and gently, giving you time to relax and enjoy the scenery. And at other times, the current moves more quickly, swiftly pulling you along, sweeping you around the next bend before you even noticed it was there. You must be alert, ready to duck under that low-hanging tree branch, or shift your weight, use your paddle to navigate around the obstacles, and you might get a bit wet in the process, but you're quick and smart, and you steer around them just in time. But every now and again, a storm surge comes out of nowhere, and your beautiful, lovely river begins to rage and is suddenly full of danger. Gentle boulders are transformed into rapids. Drops which used to be easily navigated become terrifying waterfalls. Now imagine that just as you are getting tired, wondering if you can even go on, you come around the bend, and there in the river is a big, jagged rock sticking out of the river. At first, you might want to paddle furiously to avoid it, but then out of the corner of your eye, you notice that just behind it, the water looks different. Not churning or raging, but flat and calm. The rock has created an eddy in the otherwise furious and frightening river. You realize that in these times when your world feels like it's been turned upside down, the eddy will be your key to survival. Eddies are pools of calm water created by large obstacles in the current. They allow you to rest and regather your strength before continuing on the journey. It seems to me that life is a lot like that river. And right now, it is raging. This pandemic has created challenges we have never faced before and turned things that were once sources of comfort into dangerous obstacles to be avoided. Now, more than ever, we need to find the eddies, the places of calm where we can catch our breath. Lydia said earlier that in difficult times, her faith held up. Like jagged rocks in a raging river, these cornerstones of our faith are big enough to interrupt the current. They give us something to hold on to, a place to catch our breath when the river starts to rage. So this week, before our service next Sunday, I encourage you to go out and find 5 jagged rocks that you can keep in your home as a physical reminder of these anchors of our faith. And if you have trouble remembering what each of them are, I have a little trick for you that we use with our youth. Each of these jagged rocks can be represented with a single word. All souls are sacred and worthy. Worth. Love. Courageous love transforms the world. Truth. Truth continues to be revealed. Unity. There is a unity that makes us one. And hope. Salvation in this life. That no matter what we do, there is hope for our future. I want you to take a moment now and think about the river that is your life and see which of these rocks most speaks to you as a place of refuge. In just a moment, Deborah is going to split all of us up into small groups, and you'll each have 2 minutes to share with the rest of your group about which rock appeals to you most right now. I think we're about ready. As soon as Deborah's got the tech handled.
Okay, I'm going to put you in your breakout rooms and I will send timing reminders for when to switch, finish your thoughts and switch to the next person. And then I will bring you back automatically. So you don't need to do anything except unmute yourself when you get to your room so that the other people can hear you. Here we go. Okay, that's all I see. So I think it's back to you, Lydia.
Okay, and I will place one last stone in for all those joys and concerns that remain in the silent sanctuary of our hearts, knowing that even in our silence, even in our physical separation, we are bound together in the web of life. Beloveds, what incredibly rich sharing this morning. And once again, I can feel the web of our connection between us, even though we are so far away from each other spatially. In this time, I invite us to remember our ancestors. Let us remember those who also survived hard times with even less medical support and more isolating circumstances. Let us summon up their wisdom. And let us remember that even in times of uncertainty, we write the story that will be told years from now. May it be a story of unity as we more deeply comprehend our profound interconnection. Let ours be a story of courageous love. And as we learn new ways to reach out to one another and to the most vulnerable among us, let ours be a story of building the beloved community, even as we need to physically isolate ourselves. Let ours be a story of the worthiness of all people, transforming the scarcity that fear ignites into a deeper web of community and abundance. Let ours be a story of new truths, lifting up all that is beautiful in these challenging times. And by gathering together in this way, we remember that in the midst of fear and isolation, our lives continue. We are both standing still and moving forward. And so in this sacred time, let us reach out to those who have been lost or are ill or at home or in the hospital, young and old who are suffering from the virus. Let us share our concerns and provide advocacy for the increase in testing and the adequate warnings for those who don't represent the profile that we wanted, that was first brought to us. For those who cannot gather to mourn their dead. For those who are being used, who are used to being helpers but are now finding themselves isolated, looking for a new route. Let us share our love and concern for the healthcare workers, for those with anxiety and mental health challenges, for those without homes who are even more vulnerable. Let us remember that there are those grieving the deaths of loved ones and those who are away from their home and their loved ones and unable to get back. And also, as we always do, let us find ways to celebrate with those who are finding these new ways to connect. With the coming of spring, may it be a reminder to us that new days are among us, are here, and for the ways that we can support one another, our small businesses, and each other during the economic trials that will continue. Let us show our gratitude for all of those who are continuing to work in this time, and all the artists and musicians and all the beautiful things and beautiful people who continue to bring us, to show us love and joy and beauty and resilience in these difficult times. May this be our promise and our prayers, to rewrite a story, to rewrite a story that might put us down, and to write a story of hope and resilience to be told generations from now. Blessed be and amen. I'm going to extinguish our chalice now. Please do say the words within your home. We extinguish our chalice, but not the warmth of love, the light of truth, or the energy of action. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again.
There is a place I love to call my own. There is a peace I only feel in sharing it with you and letting you share too. It makes the welcome real. Singing alone, it lets my heart shine through. But there is a music in your soul that joins its voice with mine. It's only then we find the kind of peace we know is true. We together in this holy moment, and we're grateful for the winding road that brought us to this place. And this dissonance we boldly sing resolves us to one goal. Time together, and these holy moments give us strength to go down the winding road until we meet again. We have spent time together, and these holy moments give us strength to go down the winding road until we meet again. And my prayer for you is a peace that's true until we meet again.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ted and Emily.
Thank you.
So now it's, or no, Lydia, you're still next.
I am?
Yep.
Oh. I want to offer us a benediction. So please use your hands in some ways to connect with one another, whatever works for you, to feel perhaps a connection across the intertubes, as my daughter sometimes says. And let us remember that even though we are physically distant, we do not need to be socially distant. Let us keep reaching out in love, keep grabbing on to the jagged rocks that will sustain us, and remember that we are one, and we can support one another, and we will come through to another time with great learnings and new ways of being together. Blessed be, amen. Join me for office hours, stay for coffee hour, whatever suits you to stay connected, please do. Amen.